Hello, welcome to my tier list. Let's just begin. I'll put Paintballer F tier. He really has no uses at all. He's just useless. I'll put Scout up here, because you're able to solo easy mode with him, so he has some type of use. Soldier is just a better scout. For Pyro, I'd say he's a B tier. He's a bit situational, but he does his job decently, which is melting defense and crowd control. For Pursuit, I'd probably put him in S plus tier, because his reposition ability is OP, with his really good DPS and really good versatility with coverage, which makes him overall really good. For Engineer, I'd also put her in S plus tier. She's really good for early in the mid and late game. So you're able to use her like in any stage of the game. She also has really good coverage, and she's just really good DPS. So I put her up here. For Mercenary Base, also S plus tier. If you use him correctly, he's really useful, as in he can handle crowds, single target DPS, and other things. And you can even stack it, which makes him even more overpowered. He's really good for speedrunning. For Golem Pyro, I'll put him in A tier. He just does a better job than regular Pyro, even cheaper. For Commando, he's not exactly bad. He has pretty good crowd control, so I'll put him up here. Electro, he's really good for Fallen. He's really easy to get. He has decent early game, decent early to mid and late game, actually, if I think about it. So I'll put him up here. Really good. Commander. It was like a year ago. Probably put him up here. But since some towers are just don't get affected by Commander, I'll put him up here. He's really good though. Although I like Commander more than DJ. For at least for DJ's advantage, he could buff anyone and still get a benefit. So that's why I'll put him up here. Brawler, I'll put him S tier. He's really good for spear running, and he's pretty good for mid to late game. So he's just good for the meta. For Firework, he's an interesting tower. Hmm. I guess if you use him pretty smartly, he's S tier. You can make like terrible coverage fixed with this tower, and he has like decent extra DPS if you're using like low fire rate towers. So I would put him up there. For Crook Boss, I'd say he's either A or B, but I'm gonna be a bit generous and put him A. Cause like he's a slightly worse version of going Crook Boss, but he's still really good. He still has flank detection. He has decent like single target DPS with his crooks. So and he can handle he leaks. So I'll put him up here. For Crowdmancer, I'll put him in S tier. He's best stalling tower in the game currently, and crowd stalling. So overall, he's really useful and really useful for like solo hardcore. So I'll put him up here. Accelerator. Hmm. He's kind of like second worst DPS tower in the game, but DPS towers are just generally good. So I'll put him in A tier. Like he does really good DPS, but you have to account for a lot of things to make sure he's actually usable. So I'll put him in A tier. He's alright. Ace Pilot. Um, I may be doing a little too many A tiers, but I also put him here. He has really good early, the mid to late game. He's really useful for hardcore. He's kind of like meta for hardcore early, so I'd usually put him here. And he gives hidden detection, which is really useful if you're using like a tower like Electro or Freezer or Cryo. For Demo Man, I'd say he's a C tier. No, I'll put him in a high D tier actually. He's your first crowd control tower. He has really good DPS. He just lacks range, which kind of puts him down. Otherwise, I would probably put him in C tier. For Gatling, I'll put him S tier. Although he's not as good as on release, He's just a really consistent DPS tower. He's stun immune, and infinite range, and really good crowd control. So I would put him up here. Although it does require a bit more skill to use. Holopunk. I didn't really use her that much. I would say a very low D tier. Maybe a little worse than Scout, maybe. Because, like, she just kind of lacks DPS, and she's not really that cost efficient. Harvester, eh. Like, the Infinite Pierce makes her not that bad, but, like, you're not really going to use that much. I'd give her C tier for mid. As in, like, she's alright. Nothing too bad. Medic, eh, like, back then, you'd probably put her in, like, an S tier. I'm more leaning to, like, a A or B. I would say just an A, because she can heal stuns from like A tier towers, so that kind of counts for something. Military base, S tier. He's just really useful. You may not think he's that good, but like he's really good for like solo hardcore or just like other modes in general. His airstrikes are really useful for targeting specific enemies, such as like gestures for Fallen, which makes him good for Fallen, and again hardcore. So yeah, I'd say he's really useful. He's also good for the event. The tanks are really good. You would probably aim for that, or like the gunners at level 3. Sniper, I would probably put him in like high D tier, probably next to Demo Man. These two are just really good together. Turret, I would say if you were newer to the game, he probably would have been like an A to you. But I'll say he's kind of like B tier. If you're like you've got every other tower in the game. He's still really good though. Maybe even better than Accelerator in some situations. Militant, hmm. I would say he's like a better soldier, but not good as a minigunner. So I would say like a high B tier. Yeah. Shotgunner is an A tier. Really good for spear running. He's just a no special tower version of Brawler, which is still pretty good. Gladiator, he kind of fell off pretty badly. Hmm. I mean, he still kind of does decent-ish. I'll be a bit generous and give him C tier, even though he probably should have been a bit lower. Slasher, I mean, he's good. It's just like the downside of his price for max level. He's kind of a little too expensive. I'll put him, I guess I'll put him in like a high B tier. You could disagree with that. I would understand. Jester, I don't really use him that much. But like, I could still see the use for like chilling in the confusion bombs. So I'll say he's B. He serves a couple roles better, like outstanding from a C tier. Mortar, he's kind of falling off because there's just so much crowd control towers, but he's still the most consistent crowd control tower. I'll put him in like a high B tier, really useful. Necromancer, eh, I'd say I'll put him in B tier, but I'll switch more to A tier. Rocketeer, I say C tier, like okay crowd control, like he's just okay. The downsides don't really ruin him. He's just an alright tower. Hunter, he's a high C tier. He's really good for beginners. You can literally get him from just finishing the tutorial. So he's really easy to get and he's really useful. And you can just use him for easy, casual, and even intermediate. So really useful. Minigunner, even though he's like technically the worst DPS tower, I'd put him like B tier. Spamming him is still pretty good. But yeah, Ranger, S plus tier tower, amazing boss shredder, re really good cost efficiency, full map range, but it's not like it's easy map range. Most map range towers have like an ability you have to use, like Gatling or Pursuit, but this is just like on default, so it's just really good at full map range. He's just a really useful tower. Freezer, I'd say he's just a free to play. He's an okay stalling tower. You would only really use him if there's no other stalling tower. He's good. He's good, I guess. Trapper, with his buff, I don't know if I'm glazing too much, but I'll put him in a high A tier. Really useful. Warden, I guess you could put him in A tier. He's also pretty good for speed running, and a good combination of with brawler, so you can handle like hiddens if you're speed running like a mode with hiddens. Farm, he's kind of falling off a little bit due to some harder modes that's giving enough cash where you don't need him. So I want to say he's like S plus. I think he's S tier, yeah, I guess. Going Cowboy, he's a high B tier tower. He's pretty good for falling, I guess. There's nothing much to say about him. Going Scout, he falls off after the first 10 waves, which kind of makes him like there. He's just there, if I'm being honest. Going Quick Boss, S tier. He's just like he's another very versatile tower, early to mid and late, flying detection, and it's just better crooks. So it's just better than this one, pretty much, which is already a pretty good tower. Going Mini, I think he's slightly better than Accelerator, so I'll put him in A tier. He's not like S tier worthy. Going Soldier, he exists. I mean, his buff made him actually kind of useful, but like he's just there. There's like other There's like other towers you can use instead of him. They're much easier to get. Snowballer, F tier, is generally the actual worst tower in the game. Like where the devs even joked about nerfing him. That's how trash he is. I'd say, pretty sure that's all the towers. Oh, Going Crook. I mean, Going Cowboy. I don't have him right here, but I would say he's like, I'll put him around, I guess S tier. He's another version. You can use him instead of farm for some situations, which kind of puts him up there. So yeah, this is overall my tier list here and my reasons. Keep in mind, this is like during the New Year event, this one. So this can easily be outdated because this game constantly changes meta. But this is what I honestly think. Feel free to tell me in the comments if I'm stupidly wrong, stupidly right, just anything.